I'm going to play two clips for you, and I want you to pay attention and see what difference you notice. Now, you can start paying attention to your body, you can start paying attention to your intuition, or you can start paying attention to how your mind starts to evaluate what you are seeing. So I want to say that this is a UAP. This is certified as a UAP by a MUFON director and has been put forward as an unidentified aerial phenomena by Jim Semivan, former CIA director, I guess, Colonel John Alexander, a spy master, a psychic spy master, who apparently knows a lot about UFOs. And it was written about in the culmination of the book, The UFO of God. So this is arguably the UFO of God. And I want you to just pay attention. Right? There's some blinks up here in the sky. This is it. That's the UFO. Right? How beautiful is that? How does that make you feel? What do you discern about that? And now let's move over to the next one. I just want you to see the feeling of this. So this is, again, from another human-initiated contact experiment. This is from a person named Jimmy Blanchette. And I'm just going to play this, and you can just watch this. That was it. We'll do it again. So I'm going to... Let's see. Instant replay zoomed in. That was it, right? That was it. So interestingly, there's just one moment, one flash of light in this video, but in the Monroe Institute flasher, it's sort of recurrent. It's a blip, 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 blip. Yep, you can still see it up there. Still happening during a human-initiated contact event. So there's these two really different things that feel very, very similar because they're arising from a human-initiated contact experience, they're lights in the sky, and they're responding. Now, I want to talk about geometry because this is how I relate to a lot of these things. And this practice I'm doing is, I would say, a mantic art, which means it is defined as a sort of religious, spiritual, or divination practice. And therefore, everything I'm saying here is primarily a statement of oracle, omen, divination, and spiritual practice. And yet we're using geometry, which bridges us into objective science. And so I want to talk about this. This is a visualization I made of the pulsation of light in the first video we saw. This is from software I'm calling Etiolomy, and that software is all about taking footage of pulsations of light, basically, and translating them into graphs. And I'll show you an example of that actually right now, because that's probably helpful in this experience. And I made a bunch of these graphs, so you can see I'm a little bit of a data nerd, and I produce graphs sometimes in Tableau. And I mapped about several hundred and maybe even several thousand human-initiated contact experiences. I say there's a difference in terms of how I'm mapping that in some of these maps because some of the reports don't have a lot of data behind them. So about 700 are mapped in these maps. It's a really fascinating project. I'll go through that another day. I even looked at how those compare to celestial patterns or known UFOs and things like that. But getting back here to the pulsation pattern. So this is what the software Etiolomy puts out, is these graphs, right? So let's click in on here. This is an example of the Hudson Valley UFO pulsation pattern. Okay, we can start to get some information about the proportions of the height of these things compared to the width of these things. And even though it's not even though we're not getting raw numbers, we're getting proportions, which we can study in geometry. So that brings us back to etiology. And I devoted a lot of time to this to really understand the pulsation pattern, because I go, wow, this footage really did produce a lot of blips, blip, 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 and it did seem to be really important. I mean, it was quite arguably the UFO of God, put forward by Chris Bledsoe, Jim Semivan, Colonel John Alexander, Rob Freeman, Dave Polinick, the MUFON Canada director. And yet, this one is actually a geosynchronous satellite. It is, and I figured that out by using Metabunk, as well as looking for the precedence of geosynchronous satellite pulsation patterns. And I compared this with those. I said, oh, there's a match. And I confirmed that by talking to Dr. Michael Earl. Let's see if I can get to the document here. I put all of these on my website because I'm actually just documenting my inquiries in these. And when I come to a point where I go, oh, people should know this, right? People should really know that Chris Bledsoe has not demonstrated a capacity to discern between geosynchronous satellites and UAPs, nor has the government scientists surrounding him. So I write this up and I talk about the expert opinion from Dr. Michael Earl, as space satellite expert, and he writes all of these. Anyways, I'm just sort of setting up the context of this presentation because I want to just share where I'm at with my hypotheses and my inquiries to be forthcoming into where I'm at. Because I've had, well, we should actually look at that a little bit. I've had this sort of, I've had this inquiry in the past few weeks that has been challenging for me and sometimes other people. And I don't mean to be challenging, but I do really need to talk about the context and to talk about why I'm doing this and to put forward sort of rays of hope, let's say, in terms of why I'm approaching this challenging and triggering matter of alien abduction and things like that. So as you see, the last 12 videos or so are all about John Mack, alien abduction, lurid history, UFO abduction syndrome, myth of repressed memory, and how that relates to contemporary UAP crash retrieval narratives. And the reason why I'm talking about that is because these narratives, the disempowering and victimizing narratives of contemporary crash retrievals and the narratives of alien abduction that are literally defined as disempowering and victimizing. I'm not talking about NHI encounters. I'm not talking about contactees. I'm not even talking about abduction per se, understood as a folklore or a spiritual experience. I'm talking about pseudoscience, where scientists say alien abduction, scientists or those people who derive their epistemology from these scientists, aka John Mack, they're putting forward these hypotheses of physical alien abduction. And I say they did so in the UFO abduction syndrome report published in the booklet Unusual Personal Experiences. And I wouldn't be talking about abduction had this document not been propagated to 100,000 mental health practitioners. So I wouldn't be talking about these epistemology fallacies if Danny Sheehan wasn't influencing the UAP Disclosure Act of 2023 and claiming to be on deck to be an advisor to the president about what is disclosed and what is not, at the same time as suggesting we need to establish sperm and egg donation centers to the Zeta Reticulans or something like that. So there's reasons why I'm talking about that. And the primary reason right now is both a sense of confusion regarding the alien abduction believer syndrome. I say that belief in disempowering and victimizing narratives regarding alien abduction lead to PTSD syndromes, as indicated by at least 2 peer-reviewed papers in the literature. And that's 2 more peer-reviewed papers in the literature than I've seen establishing the reality of the physical alien abduction hypothesis or even describe as evidence. So that's a big deal, actually. So something's standing in the way that seems to me to be harmful. What is it standing in the way of? Well, beautiful encounter experiences, or incredible, or scary, or whatever. But if we're using the lens of disempowering, victimizing alien abduction to understand them, then we're not actually seeing them for what they are. So that's one of the reasons. The other reason why I am talking about these things is the crash retrieval narrative assumes that there are physical objects that we can go recover. And if we're looking for those physical objects, the UFO craft that's holding occupants, we might be ignoring a huge hypothesis that could be very, very relevant. And that's what I'm here to introduce and talk about, is this other hypothesis. And I'm sort of feeling my way in the dark around these things. And so I'm just going to put out all the things I'm thinking about now so that you have a sense of what I'm even thinking about, where I'm going, and why I'm talking about crash retrieval narratives and alien abduction, believer syndrome, and stuff like that. So to get back to this, let's go to this experience, the golden ratio craft triggered by Jimmy Blanchette. He, instead of going out and just standing underneath the stars, looking at the sky, right, oftentimes he will engage these sort of ritualistic broadcasts of contact messages. So he'll make a diagram that says like asking for contact in very kind ways. Please come and share insight. We're so grateful. That sort of level of initiation, and then he puts it through his radio telescope situation, which you can see here at the bottom of this video. This sends about a quarter million watts of energy, or the equivalent of, to the radio transmitters, and it beams it straight to, in this case, he's sending it to Arcturus, but sometimes he sends it to the moon to resonate the moon or the sun. And he understands that this is primarily on experience and consciousness, but it is substantiated by the physical activity of the radio transmission. And that reminds me a lot of the dialogue between Iamblichus and Porphyry regarding the role of physical talisman in spiritual practice. So this is a talisman that I keep around. This is the round table of knowledge, which holds angelical language channeled by Dr. John Dee. So anyways, Jimmy Blanchette is sending out messages of contact, and he's receiving stuff like this. Let's see if I can. So right in here. Yeah. So the etiology wasn't just the only thing I've been exploring with geometry. I've been actually working with Jimmy to talk about the geometry behind these things. We feel like we're tuned into a similar wavelength here, and I'm receiving a lot through ruler and compass geometry communications, and he's doing amazing things. And I just want to, let's see if this is it. So here's the golden ratio craft as he's figured it out. He's measured the sides of it. This looks like a slightly different configuration of that triangle, but he's receiving these triangles. This is a craft that he's seen 3 times manifest in the same exact proportions, right? So that is really telling to me. I have not seen precedents like this, and further, I see that he receives manifestations of light that are really, I've worked with the stuff that Chris Bledsoe puts out. I've worked with the stuff that Jimmy puts out, and Jimmy's stuff is an order of magnitude more rich in terms of the geometry. Same thing with it's like, look at that. That's just absolutely, absolutely incredible that there's multiple manifestations of these orbs. Let's see if I can get to that. That was really nice. Multiple manifestations of these orbs, right? And in ways that are almost geometrically perfect, that are also correlated with lived experience of intuition. So that's what I'm talking about. And I look at this, he calls it a craft, and I've talked to him and I said, hey, is this a single object here, or are there three orbs? Are these just blobs of light, or is it a flying saucer craft? What's going on? And he's like, oh, it could just be blobs of light, right? So he's not necessarily attached to the physical crash retrieval narratives in this way. He's not seeing these as something that perhaps can crash. I'm not sure. That's something we'd have to ask him deeper, but he's very much open to the notion that these are kind of manifestations of light. All right, so why am I talking about that in this context? Well, I have been working very deeply with the Unusual Personal Experiences booklet. This is important for me to go through. I have several videos about it, so I'd recommend just going through there. Basically, I say that this document is both science and potentially pseudoscience. Say the UFO abduction syndrome is something like pseudoscience because it was a clinical definition of a syndrome put forward by a sociologist, a modern artist, and an associate professor of history, but it was introduced by lettered and credentialed mental health professionals and was sent to 100,000 mental health professionals. So that in my books looks like pseudoscience. But it ran this poll that asks certain questions, and let's see if we can get to the actual good answers. Yeah, so they ask these questions like, have you been paralyzed? Have you seen a figure in a room? These all seem to be indicators of the UFO abduction syndrome. So they say if you've had these experiences, then you've likely seen a UFO. And so some of these experiences, right, are, let's see, where are we at? Seeing a ghost, feeling as if you left your body, seeing a UFO, waking up paralyzed with a sense of strange figure in the room, feeling that you were actually flying through the air and you didn't know how, seeing or hearing the word Transients and knowing it has a secret meaning for you, experience a period of time of an hour or more in which you were apparently lost, but you could not remember why or how, seeing unusual lights or balls of lights in a room without actually knowing what was causing them, finding puzzling scars on your body. That's important for later on. And having seen either as a child or an adult a terrifying figure, which might have been a monster, a witch, or a devil, or some other evil figure in your bedroom or closet or somewhere else. Having vivid dreams about UFOs. So I say that these are sort of very similar to sleep paralysis, except for the fact that there's the body marks, missing time, and balls of light. Interestingly, they found that 1 in 5 adults have woken up paralyzed with a strange figure in the room. 1 in 8 has experienced missing time. 1 in 10 has felt like they were actually flying. 1 in 12 has seen unusual lights or balls of light in a room without understanding what was causing them. That's what I'm talking about here. 1 in 12 people. And 1 in 12 have discovered puzzling scars on their body. So, wow, those are large proportions, large prevalence rates that surprised the authors of this book and inspired them to engage the mental health professional community to alert them, hey, something is really unusual and going on. So that's the Unusual Personal Experiences book. I say that the physical alien abduction hypothesis, I don't see it actually supported in literature review or evidence. I see it supported in first-person testimony of experiencers or interlocutors, meaning people who question experiencers, who are not familiar with sleep paralysis, false awakening, dream reality confusion, or the fact that dreams and dreamlike states can happen when you're not asleep. So I really need to see someone who understands those facts, that hallucinations happen, that dreams and trance happens all throughout the day and night, that right, you can be confused about whether or not you're awake or dreaming, right? And so I need someone who really understands that and actually demonstrates a level of expertise. I say that John Mack's level of expertise in dreams is not sufficient to establish those claims. And the reason why I primarily say that is John Mack never consulted with Deidre Barrett regarding his hypothesis. Deidre Barrett's an the Harvard expert on hypnosis and dreams. She wrote her dissertation on hypnotic dreams. She's the president of the International Association of the Study of Dreams and had an office next to John Mack in some basement of Harvard, apparently, according to a personal communication I had with her. So I say that he didn't really talk to her that much. And so I look back, I go, did he ever write about dreams in a way that convinces me he understood false awakening, dream reality confusion, or sleep paralysis? And I looked back to his writings on dreams, primarily childhood dreams and nightmares and stuff like that. And I say, no, he used small sample sizes, looking at small case studies from a psychoanalytic perspective, which is basically like he's looking for like penis envy and castration wish and Oedipal complexes and Electra complexes like Freud would have us do. And I say that that's not science. That's something like religion. So, and I think that's fine, but we have to just really, I have to really just call that out, because even as late as like 2021, 2022, the people who stand in Mack's lineage, that's Ralph Blumenthal and Danny Sheehan, even in 2024, put forward the notion that John Mack was an expert in dreams, capable of discerning whether or not the people who literally just woke up in their bed to be paralyzed and see a strange figure, whether or not that was sleep paralysis or not. They say he's qualified to make that judgment. And I say he is not, has not been, and that's okay, because he did a lot of other things. But we need to really disambiguate our perspectives of this phenomena based on the literature that is actually available to us, not some hidden literature that we presume exists in some dark secret access program. There's literature that's available here and now today in the literature databases and published as books that we can engage with to have a dialectical and civil dialogue about these topics. And I say, I want to do that. And I want to do that because something seems to be happening. And what is that? Well, balls of light, strange light. That's really what piqued my interest here. And I'm not putting forward a hypothesis quite yet. I'm just observing. So I need to go back to research from 1987 that informed unusual personal experiences, right? So we get to the reference list. Where is that? There's some reference list in here, and basically they have six books. Half of them were from the authors of the syndrome or whatever, but this is what they refer to. This is Thomas Bullard's UFO Abductions, The Measure of a Mystery, right? Comparative. So he's got two of these. This is 414 pages. This is 449 pages. He received, I believe, $500 in 1987 from the Fund for UFO Research to do this work. And I mean, that's incredible. This is a lot of amazing work. And I don't think anyone's actually read this that much, because Bullard in a personal communication said he believed 12 people read this. So I go, if people would have read this document, like the authors of the UFO abduction syndrome, and actually understood kind of what it talked about, they may not have put forward such a strong notion. But this covers 270 cases of abduction, right? And there's all these different aspects of abduction, right? All these different aspects, like the highway hijack, the sexual encounters is huge, the tour of the ship, the theophany, which is like the kind of prophetic communications and stuff like that. But I challenged myself to read every one of these, right? I challenged myself to go through his books page by page and read the cases. Now, this is one of the reasons why I say abduction literature is dream-like, because I don't remember many of them whatsoever. In the same way, I don't remember people's dreams. They're sort of both boring and fascinating at the same time to me, and they have the same sort of quality. You know, I would actually challenge any of my anyone that says that wants to critique my arguments to actually read these cases, read as many of the cases as you can here, right? It was challenging for me to do that, but that's part of where I'm at. So one of the things I observed here is, oh my God, there's like balls of light that follow people and do weird things, and they transform into light figures and and this, that, the other thing. That actually seems like, this may not be an element of dream. Actually, this may be the thing that is causing this. That was a thought that came up, and I'm not that clever, so there's nothing new under the sun. Paul Devereux in the 80s wrote this book. I'm seeing if there's a 1989. I'm not sure if that. I was under the impression he was writing from the early 80s onwards, but he basically says that most UFOs are anomalies that are misunderstood. That there are like sort of plasmas or balls of light that are emerged out of geomagnetic kind of tectonic activity, and that those balls of light can kind of impact our perceptions of the world. Right? There's some sort of magnetic activity where you start to see other things or have these dream experiences, and I go, hey, that's a beautiful hypothesis, right? So I put forward the notion that visitations or contacts are engagement with entities who may be described as masterful dream shaman, which is how we explain the generation of screen memories and shared dreaming states and all those things, but also may physically be bodies of light in the form of spheres or light figures, right, that can move, self-movement, that entangled with all that is, can radiate and do all of these things. So that was my hypothesis, and then I've been looking in the past and seeing, okay, Earthlights. Earthlights doesn't attribute really a sense of sentience to the ball of light or something like that. It's more of a vehicle for Gaia consciousness, as best I can understand it. But I just wanted to talk about that because it's fascinating to me that was put forward. Here is another related book, Space-Time Transients by Persinger and Lafreniere. Basically, it kind of goes into a similar hypothesis, but suggesting that perhaps there is a sort of ley line activity here. And they start graphing a lot of stuff. I'm trying to get to the, yeah, so then they start, kind of graphing where these encounters happen, and start to find interesting places and things like that. So that's relevant because one of the authors, Persinger, created this thing called the God helmet, right? And that apparently is a helmet where it has magnets that move around the head really fast, and people have experiences of encountering entities and God and stuff like that. And this is sort of like a proof of concept for this idea that balls of light can interact with us and produce these states of consciousness. So I'm not sure where it's at. It's sort of not robust science at this point, but it is a relevant kind of thread of inquiry. I often wonder what would happen if in the 80s we said, this seems too dreamlike to actually be Zeta Reticulan doctors and chromed out nuts and bolts craft. What if it's something just consciousness based, right? What if that's the case? And what if it interacted through this sort of electromagnetic kind of light frequency thing? And then what if we started to have sensors calibrated for that, right? People oftentimes with abductions say, oh, you need to get your night vision camera out and catch those little buggers. And then if you catch them, you might hit them and snap their necks because they're taking your body and stealing your eggs or sperms, right? Like people literally say that to me. No one has ever captured video of an ET in that way, right? Stan Romanek has a video out there, but I want to see actually one or two from multiple different sources, and sources that are not problematic witnesses, right? So what would happen if we did that? What if we calibrated our sensors to light? What if we realize that these things are interactable, right? Like in the CE5 movement, human-initiated contact. But what if we didn't use the idea of UFO craft, like flying saucer things? What if we kind of reached out in our minds to kind of like an Earth, like a indigenous species of light orb, the will-o'-the-wisp, the celestial phenomena over Nuremberg, whatever the meteor shaman petroglyph was summoning, the light above Bethlehem? What if we reached out to those not like we're reaching out to Zeta Reticulan doctors or Pleiadian hunks in their craft or whatever like that. But what if we were actually reaching out to a non-human intelligence that has really shared our experience on Earth together in a physical way? What if we reached out to that? Perhaps they would respond in a different way, right? I don't really answer to people calling my name when it's the wrong name, right? I don't answer when, right? Like if a crow comes up to me and thinks I'm a bus or something like that and makes communications to me as if I'm a bus, I'm not going to respond in the same way as if it were to come up to me and go, "You're an animal just like me. You live on the earth just like me. Let's interact together," something like that. So anyways, let's keep going. So we're at the God helmet. That's pretty interesting to me. I want to delve into that more. Let's hop over here. This is a revisit by Professor Simon Holland. I enjoy his channel, and he is pointing to a recent kind of volcano eruption. And this is actually video proof. He is saying this, and this guy apparently is some sort of scientist. And he has talked to Paul Devereux, and he is looking at sort of eruptions of, this is a volcano eruption filmed, and there are these balls of light that move. Let's see if we can get, there are these like balls of light that emerge out of this. So that really proves out the physical hypothesis, or at least really indicates that, that this is really a phenomenon. Now, this doesn't prove anything, but this is, hey, something seems to be happening here with Earth lights, and this may be really a clue. And so that's what I'm sharing here and now. The next thing I want to talk about is this paper, Extraterrestrial Life in Space, Plasmas in the Thermosphere, UAP Pre-Life, Fourth State of Matter. It's got a bunch of astrophysicists. They talk about this. So I'll just say plasmas up to 1 kilometer in size and behaving similarly to multi-cell organisms have been filmed on 10 separate NASA Space Shuttle missions over 200 miles above the Earth within the thermosphere. These self-illuminated plasmas are attracted to and may feed on electromagnetic radiation. They have different morphologies, one cone, cloud, donut, spherical, cylindrical, and have been filmed flying towards and descending from the thermosphere into thunderstorms, congregating by hundreds and interacting with satellites, generating electromagnetic activity, approaching the space shuttles. Computerized analysis of different flight path trajectories document these plasmas travel at different velocities and change their angle of trajectory, making 45, 90 degree and 880 degree shifts and following each other. They have been filmed accelerating, slowing down, stopping, and congregating, engaging in hunter-predatory behaviors, intersecting with plasmas, leaving a plasma dust trail in their wake. Similar lifelike behaviors have been demonstrated by plasmas created experientially. Plasmas may have been photographed in the 1940s by World War II pilots, identified as Foo Fighters, repeatedly observed and filmed by astronauts and military pilots, classified as unidentified aerial anomalous phenomena. Plasmas are not biological, but may represent a form of free life that, via the incorporation of elements common in space, could result in the synthesis of RNA. Plasmas constitute a fourth state of matter and are attracted to electromagnetic activity, and when observed in the lower atmosphere, likely account for many of the UFO and UAP sightings over the centuries. So now in that context, right, isn't it interesting? Let's go back to Jimmy's work, where he's sending electromagnetic radiation in a very specific way to the stars, going through the thermosphere or whatever, and that these balls of light seem to respond in geometric formations and movements that are correlated with psychic communications, intuitive communications. Jimmy is feeling that I would say are kind of correlative experiences, right? So he is experiencing a tremendous download of geometric harmonic understanding. And so it's just really beautiful to see that. And that seems to me to be communication. And that seems to me to be repeatable and based in scientific hypotheses that have spanned the centuries and things like that. So that's why I get really upset about unusual personal experiences and pseudoscience when we're talking about these encounters, because there actually seems to be something filmable and there seems to be something real here. I'm not saying it is, I'm saying it seems to me like this, right? I've not seen so many, right? Like, let's go back to the author list, right? Like, I've not seen this many authors put their names on a paper about UFO, abduction since the Harvard research about how false memories of alien abduction lead to PTSD, right? Like, I haven't seen that. So this is really fascinating to me. And I want to focus more on that, but have to, because I'm based in dream studies and I care about dreams, I have to really disambiguate the mythologies around our dreams. So I say, it doesn't seem reasonable that zeta reticulan doctors are stealing bodies, but it does actually seem reasonable that there is a real encounter phenomena that is perhaps mediated by the physical body of these plasmas, that is perhaps mediated through a dream shamanic interaction with these entities. And that's important to note, dream shamanic interaction, because it gives you power in this situation. You are empowered. You are not a victim. You can mediate those relationships just like you mediate any other relationship in your life or dream life. So I showed you that. Now I want to just dive into this book, Field Guide to Anomalous Geometry, because this is in part where I really came to this understanding that there is a physical manifestation to this phenomena that is unexplained as of yet. So just to give you context, I've written about in the prologue about this connection between abduction research and crash retrieval narratives. I introduced this as an integral inquiry, meaning I have a paper I wrote in my PhD school education about this inquiry, and then I have a methods chapter. I have a kind of results chapter, which is a channeling of the entity I call Galethog, which is, for all intents and purposes, like an extraterrestrial or non-human intelligence that has been associated with missing time, visitation phenomena, most of the indicators of the UFO abduction syndrome. And I did like a missing time regression to engage with this character who set the wheels in motion that produced this work. I have a discussion chapter, conclusions, figures, references, epilogue, acknowledgement, etc. So I'm going to just get all the way down to where I wanted to show you, because this is what inspires me, right? I looked at the body marks, and there are many different types of body marks associated with abduction, but I looked at the geometric ones that seem to be communicative to me. And oh my God, this is, I offer some training around geometry. You can get into that there. Right, so I'm analyzing, right? So I say that this is Bud Hopkins, actually. I say, hey, he had this like growth on his forehead. And I'm making the pedagogical claim that Galethog actually said, make this claim. It wasn't me. He said, claim that I put in an implant, claim that Galethog put in an implant in Bud Hopkins that prevented him from seeing the truth of alien abduction. Claim that and do some geometric analysis on that to show you that we're actually in the domain of oracle or spiritual commentary, not necessarily objective science at this point, although the observations here may lead to objective scientific observations. Right, so this is some of his work. This is scoop mark. I did some geometric analysis on that. 2 scoop marks. Again, you can apply geometry to all of these things. This is what has been called a red grid mark phenomena, but this is actually a bruising pattern from sitting on a suction intake valve of a hot tub, and it has geometry in there. This is from the Falcon Lake incident. This was burned into someone's shirt and skin. This is a fascinating case, right? This is a fascinating case. This is a red grid mark phenomena. This is more characteristic of the red grid mark phenomena. has very specific geometries, and it has kind of a communicative aspect. They oftentimes are associated with strong intuitions. About 40% of the time, I would say, these marks are associated with strong intuitions of ET, NHI contact, or strange dreams or visitations. Now, we've run a survey. There's a survey at the Facebook group that I'm a moderator of, and this survey basically collects ideas about, what do you think happened? Is this aliens? Is this space people? Is this time travelers? Is it all of the different hypotheses are there? And people can select, and I guess like 10% say it's aliens. Other people say they don't know. So I just observed that there is a kind of strong geometry associated with this. The only precedents in nature I can find are kind of cymatic, I forget how to pronounce that, but that's when you take waves and you put them into media, and the media moves in a way that produces the wave pattern or the interference pattern. Now, researchers at Stanford have put heart cells in a petri dish and vibrated them with different frequencies and have produced very similar patterns here. A lot of people say that these are the effect of light. That's one of the things that is hypothesized, although there's not a lot of physical evidence for that, except for the marks themselves. And the marks has happened. One of my clients was a Harvard-trained plastic surgeon, right? So she's pretty familiar with dermatology, I imagine, and she experienced her mark during a medical event. So she was surrounded by other doctors, and they didn't have an explanation. That might be coming up, actually. But there's other types of marks here that have anomalous aspects to them that I say are very, very interesting. These seem very communicative. Like, this is on the founder of the Facebook group. He has a tattoo on the back of his neck, and he had this very, very subtle line of grids. This is a repeated pattern that happens to people that feels very intentional. This happens around the same time. There's no prosaic cause, at least that they found. And this, to me, felt like a clue. And there's geometry in there, and the proportions are already set, and it seems very intentional. And I had done no geometric observation of this. I'm leaving that as a mystery right now. This is from Jacques Vallée. These are hairdryer burns called the target symbol mark phenomena, likely hairdryer burns, right? Or something like that. Or these are marks that are 100% in my book congruent with hairdryer burns. Now, I wouldn't put it past the non-human intelligences to make a few burns or marks that look like other marks but aren't. And so that's up to you if you want to put forward that notion. I would love to hear why or how you're doing that. But it's just, it's a strange topic. So let's see. These are some triangle marks. But I'm going to get to the dots in the line phenomena. This is what happened to me, associated with dreams. I associate with, so each of these lines I call is a unique marking that has been associated with some sort of intuitive connection with non-human intelligences. That might be a powerful dream. That might be a strange animal encounter. That might be a synchronicity, like the last 4 dots, right? I saw that on multiple different experiencers at the same time of my experience, right? Like I pay attention to the social media around body marks, and I just like look down on my hand. Oh my God, there's 4 dots, right? And then I see 2 or 3 others within a day, right? And I'm like, the clustering of that is synchronistic, and so there's strong geometry in here. The working with that has really kind of revealed patterns to me that seem meaningful. Again, this is sort of divination and oracle. It's not science, but I'm discerning meaning or congruence here. There is a much bigger phenomena, right? This is a very clear example of the phenomena, and it's very, very clear. It's very clear, this one is. It shows up, has shown up, this one's from Stan Romanak. This was a very famous mark. He didn't discern the geometry behind it, but I looked at it and I go, that's fascinating, right? Here's another one. This is why I keep doing it. This guy from 2002 made a MUFON report saying this keeps happening. There's weird dreams for 10 days. It's a recurrent pattern. These marks keep showing up. I have no idea what's going on. What is going on? Does anybody have information about this? And I'm like, wow, actually, there is sort of discernible patterns in here. It is associated with contact. And this is one of the reasons why I say either a psychosomatic experience is happening with something real in the dream world, or a physical visitation of these light beings is leaving the marks. And the reasons why I say that is this is the Phoenix Lights. This comes from one of the multiple sightings in the Phoenix Lights. This is from Tom King, who filmed, some people say they're illumination flares. I say even if they are, the geometry is interesting, associated with ET NHI intuitions and dreams, and therefore is worth study. I am not sure if any of the physical manifestations of these lights resolve into just anomalies or misidentifications of known objects. I don't know. And I don't think it matters if it does, if it is associated with a lived experience of an ET NHI encounter intuition. So that's my hypothesis here. Is like, it doesn't matter if there's nothing physical at all, because something real is actually happening. But it's interesting that it is substantiated by physical evidences like video. Again, there's a geometry that's pretty discernible. These are from Lynn Kitty, who also filmed similar lights, right? Very similar kind of geometry. This is a very simple pattern. Again, that's from her missing time experience. Again, similar geometry. Hudson Valley Lights, I talked about that. I showed some pulsation patterns coming from there. This is kind of geometric analysis of their formation. Now, I would love to study these sorts of things. I would absolutely love to. But again, my domain is primarily dreams, which is why I'm talking about unusual personal experiences, why I'm talking about abduction scenarios, because that's where we have dreams of encounters, let's say, with these beings. That's where perhaps a lot of information is coming through, right? The actual screen memory, the lived experience, all of those things could be really communicative from these intelligences. This is the celestial phenomena over Nuremberg. Again, look at these. These are light orbs set in geometric patterns, right? And I observe that. Here you can really see, right? You can really see that this is, you know, you can see the different colors. They're segmented into different clusters, lines of orbs by the colors. And if you pick out, there oftentimes 4 of them. If you pick those out, you get patterns like this. And someone did this on purpose, right? Isn't that amazing? And a modern example of that is Chris Bledsoe's direction of the Discovery Channel to recreate his orbs. He directed them to recreate it in a very, very similar pattern. And finally, these are petroglyphs. These are called the meteor shaman from some people. And as you can see, there's like this little figure. This is a sideways thing because I'm looking at the orbs. He's holding something that looks like a snake, or it is holding something. It has like antenna. It's a humanoid figure. And there are these 4 spheres with sort of wings or comet tails coming off of them. Same thing here. We've got orbs with like wings coming off of it. And this is from being with really big eyes, right? It looks almost insectoid. Interestingly, the eyes are also set within the same sort of proportionality as there. So, you know, so that's really where I'm at with this. I want to offer some reflections. Come back to here, right? This looks to me like both oracle and science, That's why I'm really excited and grateful to be exploring geometric harmonics with Jimmy Blanchette. We've had synchronicities around the discovery of the underlying messages. My observation of geometry and body marks was synchronistic with his observations with some of the underlying geometries. And so I say there is actually a language of communication happening between these orbs, between the human-initiated contact experiencers and whatever they're contacting. I say it's hard to figure out. I say it's difficult to do science on it, but we can immediately start doing oracular divination experiences and engaging a sort of spiritual path of discovery. And I say that's what I'm doing here. I say that's what Jimmy's doing here. And I even say that that can inform objective science around these things, because this seems repeatable to me. He's got an experimental method, it responds. Now, you might just be like, oh, it's just Jimmy Blanchette or something like that. But when I go back to some of the, like I did look at all of these graphs I've made, right? Like these are a ton of graphs I've made about pulsation patterns of light. And where is it? Hello, Beautiful, right? This is by John Martin, and he plays guitar for light orbs in the sky, and they love it. And look at this pattern. It's not like it's not like anything I've ever seen. It's from an orb that's like moving in weird ways too. So it seems responsive to his music, right? I think that's really beautiful. And so I mean, these might resolve into something like Intelsat 29E, like the Monroe Institute, but they might not. So in any case, it's time now to move into reflections. So thank you for being on this journey with me. I hope that I have helped explain to you where I'm at with my inquiry and why I'm talking about the things I'm talking about, because I'm seeing real objective phenomena that respond in repeatable ways to human-initiated contact invitations. I'm seeing repeated phenomena that are not necessarily responding to human-initiated contact experience, like the red grid mark phenomena, but are associated with strong intuitions of non-human intelligence contact. I am seeing that there is a mode of communication that may be primarily geometric, which involves both objective and subjective domains of experience that we may fully understand when we kind of integrate both of those perspectives. So I'm saying that I just wanted to share that because I'm thinking that there is something very worth studying underneath here, and I wanted to point to that because it might seem like I'm just on a rampage against pseudoscience or kind of that sort of thing, but I'm really not. I really say this abduction thing is probably harmful pseudoscience and is probably standing in our way of immense discoveries. I mean, pay attention to some of the stuff Jimmy's saying in terms of the math coming through. Observe how inspired people are when they make contact in that way. And observe how inspiring their activities are how inspiring and prolific people's activities are when they believe they're not powerless victims to alien abduction. So I challenge anyone who would put forward the negative, disempowering, victimizing alien abduction narrative defined by the UFO abduction syndrome in the Unusual Personal Experiences booklet. I challenge anyone there to really demonstrate the joy or creativity or prolificness of anyone that holds onto that worldview. Right? Anyone holding onto, show me their prolific sciences or maths or whatever, and show me where like the sense like someone who is actually actively believing that the U.S. government is holding and hiding craft and that we need them to do something, right? Show me someone holding that disempowering view be as creative or expressive as some of the people who really believe in the contact as something that is empowering or more than that. I say Bledsoe's a really great example of a contactee who is not disempowered, and he is prolific and is bravely engaging, talking about his experience in the public. I say that's great and beautiful, right? I don't see a lot of disclosure narrative stuff coming out of him too, by the way. So in a sort of surprise moment for me, even though I talk about Bledsoe lack of discernment, I say it's totally fine. he's really working it in terms of a religious experience, and it seems like he's producing a religious movement. And I say that that is creative, and I say that's moving things forward, and is not perpetuating a victimized kind of perspective. And that's all I really want to see happen, is the de-elevation of the victimizing, disempowering narrative of UFO abduction syndrome as a pseudoscience. I want to see it just identified as a pseudoscience so that we do not feel obliged to interpret dreams or anomalous dreams or even these NHI encounter kind of phenomena as abduction whatsoever. And I think that is worthwhile doing, and I think it's worth causing some offense and having some awkward conversations, because this light is really beautiful. The communications that I'm seeing are really beautiful, and it seems to tie us into a long-standing history of interaction with celestial, luminous beings that work toward our benefit as a collective. So that's what I really would invite here and now today. And once again, thank you for being here. May you have beautiful dreams of beautiful beings who illuminate your subjective and objective inquiries. May you dream well.